Greetings and salutations, YouTube. Welcome back to another episode of Jay Fixes Stuff. No, you're not hallucinating. This week's project looks almost exactly like last week's, and there's a reason for that. Last week we worked on the Toro 824. This is the Toro 724. Basically the same snowblower. It's just compact, and also it's a 7 horsepower engine instead of an 8. Now on this snowblower, the seller, before we had agreed to meet, had told me that it was not working, but that it had been working up until last season. He then tried to fix it, which immediately throws up a red flag for me, and then was not able to. So he listed it for sale. Now, when I got there, I found out something a little bit different. Look. Yeah, it's locked up. So that was pretty much a deal breaker at that point. However, I drove a really long ways to find something to work on for you guys this week. So I figured, you know what? I was already there, and I did talk the guy all the way down to $70. So I figured, hey, why not? I'll take it. So he told me that the plug wire had ripped and that he had tried to fix it himself. So I don't know if he put it on incorrectly or if this coil is going to be bad or what have you. He didn't leave a whole lot of slack, that's for sure. So with it being locked up, I don't know if the engine is seized or if maybe it's just stuck in the cylinder. He did tell me that it did pull over the last time he parked it. However, he also then revealed to me that it hadn't run in 3 years, not 1 year, 3 years. So I think before we go any further, let's let this thing marinate in the secret sauce here. Hopefully I grabbed the right size socket. Oh, I did. And that plug was loose. Wow, plug looks new, so that was probably part of his savior. Oh no. Okay, well, he also put a crap plug in here. So, this is the secret weapon. This is Marvel's Mystery Oil, and it is absolutely great at getting locked up engines unlocked, unless you have serious engine damage. So we are gonna squirt some of this stuff down inside that plug hole into the cylinder, in hopes that it will loosen things up for us while we are checking the rest of this thing out. All right, we have a whole bunch of marbles in there now, and let's let it just sit and do its thing. All right, let's check the oil and see. Hopefully we see some oil in here and not a low oil situation. All right, right off the bat, it doesn't look bad for the level. On these, you're actually supposed to screw them in to check them. Not bad. Oil's in need of a change, but it is almost up to the full line. Pretty much perfect, actually. All right, so let's put that back in. All right, let's check the rest of this thing out. Well, that's weird. It doesn't feel right. There's a lot of play before it does anything at all. So we'll have to check the adjustment on that. That should be our drive cable. That's our auger engagement. And while it's a little squeaky, I do see it moving down there. So that feels a whole lot better than last week's project. All right, let's see. All right, so our gear selection does move. However, it is really stiff. So we're gonna have to open the bottom end up and lubricate that. Let's check the discharge chute here. Oh, it moves really nicely. Oh no. Let me get you in on this one. That's not good. Our discharge chute is broken. Oh, great. Okay, so hopefully parts are still available for this thing. So while I have you here, let me just do a quick walk around with you. Let's see. This is our throttle control. Looks like it's moving freely, so that's good. Let's see. Let's take a look in the tank here. We have a bone dry tank. All right. That might actually be working in our favor. We'll have to check out that carburetor later on. Matter of fact, let's check the choke here. Oh no. That barely moves. All right, so we have, and it's also bent off to the side. So we have some weirdness going on with that choke. I'm willing to bet he put like an aftermarket carburetor on there and didn't tell me about it, which might be okay, but as you can see, it is bent to the side and it barely moves. So yeah. All right, let's take a look down below here. Well, at least we don't have anything wrapped around the drive shaft this week, but this one has the big weird augers just like last week, so. All right. Oh no. See, I didn't think these actually had shear pins on them, so that could be a big problem right there. Most snowblowers do have shear pins, but I believe on these Toros, they have a gearbox that's set up in such a way that you're not supposed to need to have shear pins. So we might have some major problems here with that. So that's not great. We're gonna have to check that out. All right, so this just keeps getting better and better. Is the fuel shut off? Of course it's not shut off. Okay, so whatever was in there likely got into that carburetor. All right. All right, so as you can see, we definitely have our work cut out for us on this one. Hopefully we'll be able to fix things up, but we have a long way to go. So let's get this thing inside. All right, welcome back to the shop. So there is a slight possibility that I may have overheated things in the shop. Yeah, it's 89 degrees in here. It was 20 when I came out here, so I threw on 3 heaters instead of the normal 2, and now it's like the face of the sun. But anyway, as I put this thing up on the lift table, I just found something else, and this may be why this choke is all wonky like that. This carb box is not even on. It's just kind of there. I think the only thing holding it on is actually that choke rod. So let's pull this off and see if I can snake this past. Yeah, he just kind of threw that on. And if you look over here, this carb has all sorts of nasty stuff leaking out of it. So yeah. Also, I don't know why this is up here. That's weird. And he has that tube wrapped around the linkage. All right, now on these old Tecumsehs, and looking at the serial number here, it looks like it's a 1997, just like our last project. I don't know that they had plastic choke rods. This may be an aftermarket, but it's kind of looking too old and dirty to be an aftermarket. So this one's kind of throwing me off a little bit. All right, so let's let this sit for about half an hour, and then we will come back to see if we can free up that engine. All right, so it's been about half an hour, actually 35 minutes, and Marvel's actually works pretty quickly. So on this one, I don't know if I have a nut on the end of the crank there that I can get onto. If we take off this housing and the recoil, or if it's just a starter cup in the way. So let's take a look. And actually, it looks like this is the kind where I can actually just pull the recoil out, which is nice. Maybe I won't have to take that whole housing off. Let's try to just take the recoil off real quick. Looks like it's maybe a quarter. Yep. All right, let's see if we can cheat here and just do the recoil. All right, we need a ratchet to get on this one. No room for the impact on this side. Jeez. Not even room for the socket. I need a wrench. Ratchet wouldn't fit. Let's try this tiny little cute 1/4 inch wrench. Probably would have been faster to take the whole housing off at this point. All right, those 2 are out. I'm guessing there's a 3rd down here. No, maybe not. No, there's one at the top. All right, let's see if this will come off now. Cool. And do we have, yeah, I might be able to turn it with that. And this recoil is functioning properly, so it wasn't an issue with the recoil. All right, it looks like I can get on here. So let's try going backwards first. It's moving, not well. All right, let's try going the other way. It's moving that way too, a little bit. Oh, we're moving. Oh, Yep, we're moving. It's actually moving fairly easily now. A little hard part right there. No, got over it. No, we're good again. Now the plug is still out, so this should not, okay, now it's moving easy. There shouldn't be any compression because that plug is out. Yeah, it's moving nicely now. Now it slows down a little there. Maybe we have a little ridge in the cylinder. It's pretty easy here. Oh, moving very easy there. Yeah, very nice. Okay, let me see if there's room for the borescope in there. All right, so I lowered the lift table so that we can see down into the plug hole here. But before we start messing around there, I want to put the old janky plug back in so that we can blow off the debris, because I don't want that ending up in the head there. Excess debris removed. Now in most engines, you can usually look down inside through the plug hole and see where the piston is. Unfortunately, this is a flathead engine, so it's a little harder to see. It's kind of over that way. So let me just see if I can look from an angle here. Okay, so that is down a bit. I don't know if it's at the bottom of its travel, but it gives us a little room to be able to see in there. I'm just wondering if we can snake a borescope in on an angle just to get a peek. I don't know if we're going to be able to, but it's kind of worth a look. Now this borescope has 3 different cameras all built into one and 3 different angles, and it has a light on it. However, I think it also is supposed to do video, but I've never looked into how to do that. So I'm just kind of setting this thing up in front of one of my cameras. So hopefully you can see whatever it is that I'm going to see. So let's try to put this in. I don't know if on a flathead engine this is going to work in this angle, but let's give it a shot and just see if we can see anything in there. All right, so we got a valve there. Another valve there. And let's look that way. All right, we can kind of get a glimpse at the top of the piston and the cylinder. Hey, look at that. I think I'm in. All right, so all we can really see is the stuff on the top of the piston. Can't really get a great look at those cylinder walls, but I don't see any ridges towards the top that would stop us, so I think we're good. Hopefully the camera is picking this up. All right, so now that we have the engine freed up and we've confirmed that we don't have any kind of a rust lip left over after Marvel's Mystery Oil did its thing, I want to get a plug back in here and just see if we can get it back outside just to see if we're able to see if this thing will start or not. So let's get a plug in here. Now, this Savior one is definitely not going back in. However, I believe I'm going to have to look up the specs on this engine. I know the 8-horse takes an RJ19LM, which is what this one is. So I'm going to compare that to the aftermarket one that was in there. All right, so the thread length looks about the same. The actual length of the plug is quite a bit different, but who knows if he actually had the correct one in there. So I will look that up, but for now, let's try the 19LM, the Champion plug. All right, and I guess before we put it in, we should probably just verify that it's at the 30 thousandths. All right. Yeah, it's a tight 30, but it feels good. Okay, feels good. Get this back on. All right, we just have that top one started just for alignment purposes. Let's do the side one. And this is the one I think we need the wrench on. All right, I'm gonna snug this one all the way down. All right, good. And then let's find that third one. Just start it. Cool. All right, now we just need to snug down the top one. All right, let me just make sure our recoil is good now. Oh yeah, it's moving nicely now. Oh, we have good compression also. Now, for this test, really, you know what? We need to fix this before we can bring it outside. We can't have this tube all wrapped around the linkage like that. So let's pop this off and see what we can do to fix it. Somebody just put it together wrong. All right, we'll get this back on that nipple. And we're back on. Okay, cool. All right, as you can see, we are back outside. We are basically going to be testing two things right now. Number one, we're just going to see if it will attempt to start with just a little bit of carb spray in it. And number two, we're going to see if we have spark. So we're not going to try to get it running for very long, just to see if it wants to run, basically. So the key is on this choke. We're going to have to manually operate it with this little plastic thing, but I'm going to spray some carb cleaner in here, like so. And we probably should leave the choke open, but I'm going to try to close it just for the first pull. I think primarily what we're looking for here right now is just to make sure that we have spark. All right. Wow. Outstanding. All right, so I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but it is flashing high. So that's good. That actually means that we do have spark. And let's see here. And it did try to start as well. So I'm just going to try to see if it'll run for just a little bit longer, just to see how the engine sounds. And I'm going to open up the choke this time to see what it does. Wow. I think we got a runner here. That thing sounded great. All right, so I'm going to get some parts ordered. We're going to order up one of these, provided it's still available 29 years later. We hopefully are going to be able to clean up this carb, but again, I'm not loving the plastic thing on top. So this may be an aftermarket. I'm going to have to look into that. But either way, I'll check and see what is available for that as well. I'm going to check on the shear pins, but I did not believe that this kind had any. So I'm going to have to check the parts list, and that's pretty much it. So I'll meet you back inside. All right, so I kind of glossed over the marvels earlier. So this is the stuff right here that I used to free this engine up. It is an absolute miracle, but it really isn't. This is what the full container looks like, but obviously you don't need to use a big, huge thing all at once, and you can buy smaller ones if you're just a homeowner, but this is what it looks like. Now, years ago, it was a closely guarded secret of what was in this stuff that worked so well. As it turns out, after a legal battle where they were required to disclose the ingredients, it turns out that it's just transmission fluid and a solvent very similar to acetone. So if you want to make your own at home, you can just throw together some transmission fluid and acetone, mix it up, and it will work just as well as marbles. But I will also throw a link in the description because it is good stuff. All right, so I do believe, after looking over this auger, that even though the information online says that there is not a shear key for this style, because this gearbox is supposedly made intelligently to disengage rather than, shearing. If you look down here on this camera, I lined that up, where if you put that through like so, it's just like the other one. So I think there's supposed to be a shear pin there. However, getting to the back side of that, I have no idea how that's even possible. So I'm going to have to look into that and add that to the ever-growing list of parts that we're going to need. So I am going to get a parts order in, and in the meantime, there are some things that we can do after I place that order. We can do an oil change now that we know we have a solid engine, so that's good. We can either clean or replace this carburetor. Preferably we clean it. Once we get the shear pin, we'll be able to fix the auger. We can open up the bottom end, get everything lubricated, and hopefully fix our gear selection issue, how that's not moving well. And that should be enough to get us started while we're waiting for parts. So I will meet you back here once I get that parts order in. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got parts. So when I placed you on a brief hold to head inside to make an order, I was planning on using my large dealer. I called my local small dealer on the off chance that he had it, and he had it. So we have part number 56-2680. I really did not think he was going to have it, but he had it. So this is a 29-year-old snowblower, and he just happened to have the part for it. So pretty cool. Next, he did in fact have not one, but a whole bag of shear pins for this model. So I bought two. Always good to have a spare one, along with the corresponding nylock nuts. And finally, this was not from him. I checked my carburetor shelf for the carbs that I stock, and lo and behold, we do actually have a carburetor, a brand new aftermarket, designed specifically for this engine on my part shelf. So we're actually going to try to clean this one up, even though it looks like it's in really rough shape. We're going to actually try to clean it up. So this will just be a safety net. So if you've watched any of my videos, you probably know that I'm a bit of a tool nut, and I kind of have the compulsion to have every tool known to man. Now, this morning, I actually saw an advertisement for something called a tight reach extender. It was a long, kind of a flat bar that had a little clamp on the end, used for holding nuts or small bolts in place in hard to reach places so that you're able to reach those hard places. Now, I exercised some self-control and I did not buy that tool. It would be perfect for this situation because I cannot get to the nut on the back side of this to where we need to hold the nut. So I am now going to have to try to initially maybe use a magnet on a stick for the nut on the back side just to get it started. Then we'll try a small ratchet holding the back part, and then maybe an impact on the front part. So we're going to muddle through this, and I'm going to try to let you see what we're doing. But all right, so if you are doing this yourself, this is a 7/16. All right, and I guess we're just going to stick this through on the top. Okay, that is all the way through. We're going to try an extension with a short socket and see if that'll fit. That nut is kind of sinking into the socket, so not sure that's going to work. But let's try it. Ooh, I might have got it. Did I get it? Hey, look at that. Very cool. All right, so when you're tightening up a shear pin, you do not actually want to crank it down super tight. You want there to be just a little bit of room for the auger to slop back and forth. If you make it too tight, it's going to make it harder for it to shear when it's supposed to shear. So let's see. All right, I think I'm on the back now, almost, kind of, sort of. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm on the back. All right, so let's see if I can tighten it up from the front. Now, just a reminder, anytime you're working in here in the bucket inside the housing, you want to unplug your spark plug wire just to make sure there's no chance the thing can start up on you. In our case, we have zero fuel, but there still might be a little residual carb spray that we sprayed in there earlier. So it's a good idea just for safety purposes, just to make sure you pull that plug wire before you work inside the bucket. All right, we want just a little bit more tension there. All right, and the wrench is stuck. All right, ratchet has been freed. All right, so as you can see, we have still just a little bit of slop there, which is what you want. And same on the other side. Wait a minute, what is this? Okay, Oh no. All right, let me show you what I just saw. What in the world? Now, I don't know if you can see this, but if what I'm seeing is what I think is what I'm seeing, I think someone took a threaded rod and stuffed it through there on the opposite side, meaning they likely sheared both shear pins and they decided to just stuff this through. That's so not good. So I guess it's a good thing that we bought 2 of these things because it looks like we are apparently going to need to use them. So not good. I don't even know how we're going to get to that. It's a bent threaded rod, like it tried to shear, but it couldn't because it's not a shear pin. It's just a really long threaded rod. Holy cow. All right, so I just loosened up the anchors on each end of those auger, like the spindle area there. And just to give us a little bit more room to hopefully be able to do something to get this nonsense out of here. And can you see this nonsense? I'm not sure if you can. Let me try to get you in a little tighter. Look at this. Do you see that? There's like a barrel nut inside there and the whole thing is bent. So had this been an actual real shear pin, that would have sheared like it's supposed to. So now I need to struggle with this to try to get this nonsense out of here so we can repair this properly. And just for the record, when I said that put up a red flag for me when the seller said he tried fixing it himself, this is why. Because most people just don't fix things properly. They just cob job them in hopes that they can just get through another season with them and then it can be someone else's problem. Like me! Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We need to be able to get that barrel nut out of there, but we don't really have room or the time to be doing it a million turns to get it out of there. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to try to put a little rotary tool, a Dremel with a cutting wheel on it, and just check and see if we're able to cut that off a little closer to that awful barrel nut. Ideally, we'd cut it on the other side of it, but I don't think we have that kind of clearance in there. So I will throw on the safety glasses here, and then we're gonna attempt to use this thing. Yeah, we have like no room in here. Yeah, we don't have room. All right, we are now up to plan C, and not sure if it's gonna work, but what we're trying here is, this is a Milwaukee oscillating multi-tool, and we're just gonna try to cut some of that off. Not sure it's gonna work, but let's give it a shot. All right, well, it worked, kind of. I mean, it got some of it off. Let's see if we're able to turn that barrel nut at all. Probably not. All right, it is turning. The question is the other end turning as well? And that would be a yes. Okay. Well, if I can figure out what kind of a head that is, then I can maybe immobilize it, but I have no idea what the hell he put on there. It appears to be either a hex or a Torx, but I can't see it. So let's just try putting some random things on it and see if I can get a purchase on it. Let's start with the old standby, the T27, and just see if it happens to be that. All right, my regular impact bit wouldn't fit in there, so I'm going to attempt to put this thing in there and see if I can get it on that head, whatever it is, just so we can hopefully see if it's the right size, or even if it's a Torx. It might be a hex. Okay, as silly as this is, I'm gonna break out the borescope again because I just cannot see back there. Okay, it's a hex. I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but yeah, it is a hex, maybe like an H5. All right, let's try that. All right, so I think my guess of the H5 missed the mark. So let's try an H4. I wonder how surgeons do surgery like this. That's what I want to know. Am I on this thing? It kind of looks like I almost am. No way, right? Now, can I get on the other end? I think it's gonna have to move the camera. All right, I think I'm gonna have to pull the camera out just so I can hold this thing in place if it's even in the spot that it's supposed to be in. All right, so I believe I'm on the head with the hex, and then I have needle nose pliers on the bottom part attempting to turn that stupid barrel nut. So wish me luck. It is not cooperating like at all. It's like seized on there, like fully seized on, because it's bent. This is awful. Nope, it's not gonna turn. It is seized on there. All right, so just to bring everybody up to speed here, I've spent probably 40 minutes struggling with this, and I think I finally have it broken. So just to bring you up to speed, the top fastener that was used, the head is actually a 5/32, and this fits perfectly in there. As for this part down here by that barrel nut, I actually was able to use the Dremel again to cut everything below the barrel nut off, and the barrel nut was seized onto the threads. So I put some PB Blaster on there, let it set for about 10 minutes, and I finally got it to move using a needle nose pliers. So I am now in the process of getting that barrel nut off of there so we can get that stupid pin out. Victory! Hell yeah. That is our prize. Holy crap, that was obnoxious. Jeez. Now let's see if we can get that stupid pin the rest of the way out. Holy cow. I don't think I can get you in there any better, but right there, see the bottom of that pin? And the top is right there. It's like impossible to get to. So I'm hoping I can use my fingers and get the rest of the way out now. Or these things. Yes! Hell yeah, look at that. And that's what I was talking about where it was bent, so you couldn't get that stupid nut around the stupid bend. I think it's my word of the day, stupid. Man. All right, so to make life a little bit easier, I just rotated the impeller until I had the auger and the shaft lined up to a place where we can actually somewhat get to it. So that right there is the hole. All right, so now we're going to do what we did before. Trying to use a little magnet to hold it in place. Although in this angle, I don't know if that magnet will be able to do it. So, all right, so to try to get this pin in, I'm going to do it similar to how we did it on that side. Get our 7/16 socket, drop our nut in there, try to line it up on the bottom. Actually, let's drop this pin through first. That seemed to work well last time. All right, so let's line this up. Drop that pin down there through the hole, or not. There we go. All right, now in theory, we should be able to just do what we did before and put the nut in the socket on the bottom and then try to find it. All right, we are started. This is coming together now. Very slowly, but it's coming together. Okay, let's get this ratchet and the socket back on the bottom to hold it in place. We're going to tighten the top like we did before with the impact from the top. Let's check the tension. Looks good. Okay. Now let's line our auger back up with the frame. Let's get that bottom one lined up. All right, let's get the other one going. Outstanding. All right, let's tighten these bad boys up. All right, so we now have two brand new shear pins in place, complete with new nylock nuts. As you can see, it is now working properly the way that it is supposed to be. All right, so last week you guys had seen me struggling getting this plug out of here and had offered a really helpful tip. which was taking a extension like this, putting it over that plug, and then taking a wrench and just turning it here. That way you get a bit more leverage and you're not bumping into these stupid augers. Now, another suggestion that I dare say is even better suggestion comes from my buddy Kenny of Ken's Small Engine Repair here on YouTube. He suggested that I get these. This is super cool. It is actually a pipe plug socket set. So check this out. You take this out, take the 3/8 socket out of here. We'll put this over here. You then pop that onto your extension, like so. Then put that onto your ratchet, set it to loosen, and now it is super easy to get that off. Check that out. Easy, easy, easy. So once again, check out his channel, Ken's Small Engine Repair on YouTube. All right, so we are now going to check this. As with last week's project, if all is well on this gear oil, we should be greeted with oil when we take this plug out. And once again, it appears to be bone dry. There is nothing coming out of there. All right, so for this, as with last week's, the specified gear oil that was called for 29 years ago by the OEM, Toro, is no longer available anywhere. So, as with last week's video, this is what we're going to be putting in. This is the closest thing that's available. And Toro specifically says, do not use synthetic. So we're going to use this. We just want to keep going until we see gear oil leaking out of here. There we go. Now it's seeping out. All right. All right, let's just clean this up a little bit. And then we'll tighten it down. All right, now we just reverse our ratchet here. Overdo it, just snug it down like that. I don't know if there's a torque spec for this. I assume there is, but this thing is prehistoric. All right, so we're going to be putting this thing up in its service position soon. So in our case, we don't need to put anything over the gas tank to keep the fluid from leaking out of there because, well, we don't have anything in that tank. Now, it was pointed out by a few people last week that while I said you should take the fluids out before you put it in service position, it's not necessary to take the oil out if you don't need to change it anyway, because there's usually a decent O-ring in here. Not always, but usually. Yes, it can leak, but you don't have to take the oil out. It's just we're already going to be doing it anyway, so we might as well. All right, and we are going to be draining that, as with last week, with a pneumatic siphon, because it did a really good job last week. All right, let's get it going. All right, so I'm not really a big fan of the way this snowblower was designed as far as its service position. If you can see here, it is tilting way over, much more than it would on most snowblowers. So as you can see, the engine, instead of just being sideways, is almost upside down. So kind of weird. Also, it looks like that belly pan might be dented in just a little bit. So not a huge deal, but I just want to make sure it's not pushing into anything. And maybe we can bend it out just a little bit. All right, let's get that plate off. Yeah, just a little bit. Oh no. Really? Come on. Another mouse nest? Oh, dude. All right, let's hope this critter is not at home, because last summer I had a generator that I was working on and I came across one of these mouse houses and, well, he was at home and he leaped out of the thing directly towards me and like pretty much scarred me for life. So anyway, let's clean this nonsense out here. And again, let's hope he's not home. Ugh. It's It's like he made his house out of mostly grass clippings. Ugh. All right, we did as much as we could using our hand, or glove. Now we're gonna use a vacuum. All right, it looks like we got it cleaned up pretty well. And it appears to have been a short-term occupancy because there is no rust whatsoever underneath there. And when they live there a long time, they start, you know, urinating and whatnot, which causes rust. And there isn't any in here, so that's good. All right, so if you watched last week's video, you'll notice that it actually had a nice chain drive. This is a more basic version that just has some gears. Not quite as nice as the chain drive, but we will clean it up. And then we will lube it up again. All right, now the most important thing to lubricate down here is actually this shaft, because that is where it slides back and forth on the friction plate. And I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna try to get you in closer. Look at that tiny little friction plate. That thing is a little baby one. And let me go pull the shift mechanism so you can see how it currently is working. See how it's struggling to move? It's because it's not properly lubricated. So let's put it all the way to one side, and then we will clean up and lubricate that other side. All right, we're just gonna clean it up with some Scotch-Brite real quick. And we're gonna throw on some white lithium grease. It's waterproof and good for cold temperatures. Don't need a lot. You don't want that flinging off onto your little baby friction plate there. Wow, that was so dry. There's like no lube on there. And I'm hitting the camera again. Sorry, guys. All right, that's about the most you want right there. All right, let's try moving this thing now. Oh yeah, much better. Now we're at the other end. So now we want to get this part in here. I'm feeling like a little grit. So I actually do want to hit that with the Scotch-Brite just like I did with the other area. Now that we can get to this. Cool. Now we can lubricate the rest of it. All right, there we go. Yeah, that feels much better. You see we have that arm moving, and then we also need to lubricate that hex shaft down there as well. That one actually looks nice and clean, but bone dry. So we're gonna lube that as well. A little harder to get to though. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do like one finger at a time here, it looks like. All right, that section's feeling good. So let me just slide that over. Oh yeah, it's moving nicely now. All right, now let's get this part of the hex shaft that we can get to now, sort of. Again, I can only get like one finger there, so. Let's put just a little bit more in that section there where that other arm moves. And we'll move it a bit more. All right, now I'm going to cover up that friction plate with a new rag. And actually, it looks like I did get a little mess on that wheel again, which is bad. You cannot have any lube on that roller. It needs to be dry. Let's cover up the friction plate so we can finish lubing this. You don't want to overdo it. You just want a little bit, because if this flings onto your friction plate, your drive's not going to work right. And we just want to make sure nothing is flinging off onto our disc. And that looks good. All right, so our belts look good. Brake is holding well, so that's good. All right, let's check our tire pressure. All right, so on these, Toro only wants 7 to 15 for PSI. I usually split it in the middle, put it somewhere around roughly 10-ish. All right, feels good. And, all right, looks and feels good. And when you're checking out the bottom end here, the things that you want to look for, you want to check your pulleys, make sure they're not all rusted and affecting your belt's movement. You want to check the belts, make sure they're not brittle, make sure they're not cracked or breaking or ripped or torn. You want to check your spring. There's a brake pad right here. You want to check your brake pad, make sure it has plenty of meat on it, and it does. So we're in good shape there. Again, you want to lubricate all the things that we lubricated. You want to check your tire pressure. These are all just basic service items that people generally tend to skip over and not care about. Now, when putting yours up in your service position, we just briefly touched on it before, you want to make sure that you put something between your gas cap and your fuel tank. So usually like a sandwich bag or even like a shopping bag, like a plastic one, something like that, and then just twist it down. And then when you put it up into its service position, just make sure it's not leaking all over the place so you don't have fuel everywhere. And also check your oil dipstick area to make sure that you're not leaking anything out of there as well. All right, the other service items that you want to check, aside from already looking at the things that we already looked at, checking your impeller, checking your augers, your shear pins. You also want to check the scraper blade, which is right here. And you also want to check the skid shoes here. The skid shoes, they don't actually look that terrible. These are actually reversible though. So these actually have plenty of meat left in them. So we will just check the height of everything later on. I may even do that off camera, but this scraper blade is looking a little bit rough. Now, the nice thing is it looks like this one's actually reversible. The last one that we worked on that was similar to this, it was not reversible. So they just wanted you to buy the blade. Unfortunately, that blade is discontinued. And I assume this one probably is as well. But this one does appear to be in decent shape on the other side of it, and it is reversible. So we are going to try to reverse that as well. All right, I think these are a half. Yep. Okay, so let's hope we can get these out. If they fight us too much, then we may have to let it ride, but I'm going to throw a little PB blaster on each one of these. Might not help, but it certainly can't hurt. All right, let's see if we can get these off. Well, we're 1 for 3. I don't think we're going to be able to get these off, guys. All right, so before switching over to the big Ooga Dooga and probably causing lots of problems, I am going to switch over to some actual real impact sockets, and I'm going to try a ratchet. 2 down, 1,000,000 to go. All right, the ratchet and the impact socket seem to be working pretty well, even though I was intending the impact socket for the big Ooga Dooga 1/2 inch, but so far, knock on wood. Ooh, this one feels like it's gonna break. Oh, hallelujah. That was awful. Oh. What do you think, guys? Am I going to get this one? Oh, the whole scraper blade's coming now. Alright, so just a quick update of this absolutely awful, epic battle that I just had with this stupid scraper blade. So, as you saw, this one last stupid bolt and lock nut would not come off, no matter what I did. And it was just egged out enough so that I could not get any kind of purchase to turn the thing. So, I tried and struggled and struggled and tried, and no matter what I did, I could not get that stupid bolt off. I then finally had an epiphany, and I thought, hey, I'm going to slot the end of it and use a big flathead screwdriver to hold on to the thing to get that lock nut off. Yeah, that did not work. No matter what I tried, I could not get it off. So after literally an hour and a half of struggling, I finally said screw it, and I cut it off with a cutoff wheel. So the thing is now off, only to get awful news. When it was in that position like that, it looked like that blade was going to be reversible. Yeah, it's not. And they intentionally did it so that it's not. They didn't put it in the middle. They intentionally put those two like that so that you can't reverse it. If you do reverse it, like so, and line it back up, so they're in those holes, there's no blade there. So they intentionally made it so that you have to buy a whole nother blade. Now, if this is anything like the last one that we worked on, the 824, then that blade is long since discontinued and you can't get it either new or used. So I'm not a happy dude right now, but I am going to look into my options and see what we can do. Worst case scenario, this awful one can go back on, but again, I had to cut off that bolt and lock nut in order to get this thing off. So, not happy. We'll see what I can do. I'll check back in tomorrow. All right, so just a quick update. It is now the following morning. I have placed a parts order. Believe it or not, there is still one blade available, a scraper blade, But unfortunately, with shipping, it cost me like 50 something dollars. So not great, but you know what? This project is really more about restoring this thing than making a dollar. So I will probably end up losing money in this project, but I really want this to be done the right way. Now, that being said, as you can see, I have temporarily, just for testing purposes, resurfaced this blade the best that I could. And I've also put some temporary fasteners on here. So it actually doesn't look terrible like this, but I'm not leaving it this way. I have placed the order for the replacement scraper blade. It's going to take a couple of weeks to get here, so I won't hold the video up for that. But for testing purposes, once we're ready to test this thing, assuming it'll even work, this is what we're going to use for testing. Just these 3 temporary fasteners and the resurfaced old blade that is destined for the garbage bin. I am now going to finish up cleaning on this, which nobody wants to watch on video, and then I'll turn you back on. All right, and just another quick update. I just took a dead blow hammer and beat this thing into submission. So while not the prettiest thing in the world, as you can see, it is no longer caved in. So we could have left it the way that it was because no one's going to see it, but honestly, I'd still know that it's messed up. So I'm glad we got that hammered back into shape. All right, so last night I went through hours and hours and hours of footage from this project, and I polished it up and I did a nice final edit on it, and I found that we are already almost an hour into final video here. And we still have a lot of work left to do in this thing. So I'm going to try to do some things off camera just so you guys don't have like a 2-hour long video. And if you could, can you please just throw a comment just letting me know if you prefer a longer form video? Like, what is good for you? Do you like a 45-minute video, an hour and a half? What do you prefer? Just let me know, please. It does help me out. All right, so I have done what I could to clean up this old snowblower. I still have to do some lubrication, which I also will do off camera. But as you can see, this thing is looking quite a bit nicer. And now I think what we need to do is get set up to replace this broken discharge chute. And then I think we'll start working on the fuel system. All right, I have never used this tool before. However, if you look on my channel, you'll see that I did a kind of funny video where I bought some knockoff Milwaukee tools. It was this, and I want to say it was an impact driver, and I did a video on them. So I had never actually intended to use this, but I just spotted this, and I figured, hey, let's give it a shot. All right, it sounds weird and loud, but it did work. Let's try this side. Actually, it works pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. All of my regular tools are genuine. It's just this thing, by the way. And in the trash it goes. All right, that side started. All right, let's tighten this puppy up. I can't believe I'm using this thing. I think I'm gonna over tighten that side a little bit. There we go. All right, discharge chute down. Let's work on this fuel system. All right, so the throttle assembly is working well. Throttle plate is moving, so that's good. All right, let's start getting this carburetor off of here. Now with Tecumseh's, the biggest pain in the butt is usually getting the carburetor off of the intake without destroying your gasket. But in this case, it looks like someone has already taken it off at some point, and it is sticking nicely to the carb. And while I do have another gasket, I think I'm not going to disturb it. So we'll try running it through the ultrasonic and see if it causes a problem. If it does, we'll scrape it off and I'll put a brand new one on. But aside from that, that gasket's actually in decent shape. All right, let's finish getting this thing off of here. And normally you'd want to clamp this off so that it doesn't leak all over the place. However, that tank is empty, so I'm assuming there's nothing in the line. All right. just snip the end off where I kind of scuffed it a bit. Cool. All right, let's get this linkage off of here. This snowblower has fought me every step of the way on this project. So I guess getting this linkage out should not be any different. Holy cow. All right, let's get that prime line off. Cool. All right, let's clean this thing up. I have the ultrasonic all heated up and ready to rock. Now we just need to tear this thing apart. So let's just quickly go over what we have here and what you'll need to take it apart if you're doing this at home. This right here is a 7/16, so you'll want a 7/16 wrench. You want a small flathead screwdriver to take out that needle right there. That's our low-speed needle, that's the high-speed needle. Both of those are adjustable on this type of a carb. And actually, this holds that housing on that was not held on, so let's get that out of there. And on this type of carb, these brackets are removable. However, there's no reason to remove them with what we're doing right now. So this is your idle set speed right here. That's your screw to adjust that. As you can see, it pushes the throttle plate away. And you will actually want to adjust that as necessary because this type of a snowblower does idle. So let's go ahead and start getting this apart. Let's start off with the bottom here, the high-speed needle. This is the release, by the way. It's a drain. I believe we're empty, but if you hold that in, it's spring-loaded, and anything that's in it will actually drain out. And as you can see, nothing's coming out. So either that is plugged on the opposite side or it's empty. And I believe it's empty because the tank was empty. And you'll have a little rubber gasket, little O-ring type of a deal underneath this, which you generally want to try to keep away from carb cleaner. So we will do that. I'll take that off, put it over there. Now on this is also removable and you'll want to remove it to clean it. However, you're going to want to note where it is. The standard default setting is a turn and a half out from being lightly seated. So let's see where it's currently set. That's half, one, about 1 1/4. So it's a little leaner than how it would come from the factory. That's your needle right there. Pretty gross. And it's our spring. All right, so let's set that there for now. And we're going to want to clean this. It is gummed up, as you can possibly see in that camera. You can't see daylight through there really, or just barely. So it should be significantly larger than this file, but that'll help get some of the gunk out. Oh yeah, look at that. That was totally occluded. All right, so let's use a big file in there. And we're not trying to open it up, we're just trying to clean the plaque and the nonsense off of there. So oh yeah, look at that. Yep, that thing was blocked up. All right, I guess this doesn't go all the way through. I thought I remembered this one going through, kind of like an emulsion tube, but I guess not. All right, so let's spray some carb cleaner through there. Nice, okay. Oh yeah, we're in good shape now. All right, let's take out that low speed needle. And remember, you want to check and see where it is. So we'll do half. Wow, not even 1 turn. It's like a little over 3/4, so that's bizarre. It might not even be able to idle like that. I have found that with these, the turn and a half is really close to being correct. You want to fine tune it a bit, but it's actually not that terribly far off from where you want to run it. Ugh. Wow. That's crazy. All right, place your bets. What are we going to see in the bowl here? Wow, it's almost totally clean. Look at that. That's wild. Oh, and it has one of the old brass floats. That's cool. The problem with the brass floats is they can develop little pinhole leaks. So when you remove this, you actually want to shake it and make sure there's no liquid inside. If there is liquid, you need to replace it. Let's get that pin out of there. Let's see how the needle's doing. Oh, the needle looks good. Let's check the seat. Throw that in here. Yeah, it feels nice and light, and I don't see any visible issues, and there's no fluid in there, so I think we're okay. So we'll put that off to the side. All right, so this is a Tecumseh carburetor tool, as seen in the last video. So I will try to remember to throw a link to this in the video description in case you want to pick one up. If you're working on a Tecumseh carb, they are really handy to have. They actually have seats inside here that you actually want to take off before you clean, because the carb cleaner and also the ultrasonic solution can deform them. All right, so looks good. Let's just put it up on the end here so that you can see it in the camera. Now there's two sides of these. There's this side, which is, I believe, the ribbed side. See if you can see that, probably not. And then you have the other side, which is the flat side, the smooth side. So you want the ribbed side that has that little circular line on it towards the carburetor, and you want the smooth side away. So let's put that over here, and let's continue on. Now, on some of these Tecumseh carburetors, they actually have a removable emulsion tube that goes down there. If it's the metal kind, which I think this probably is, those are not removable. It's only the plastic ones that are removable. So you probably can't see it in here, but you'll see a little tube sticking up behind that throttle plate in the middle of the throat. So we will just try to push it down and see what it feels like. I'm guessing it's probably metal. They usually, in this vintage, it usually is. Yeah, that's metal, and that's pressed right into the carb, so you're not getting that out. So we will just simply clean it. And as you can see, this gasket doesn't look bad. It's a little raised in a couple places, but it's actually nice and thick, and it's not cracked. It's in good shape. So we will not disturb it as long as it makes it through the ultrasonic. Then we'll leave it the way it is. All right, so we're going to put some carb cleaner down through the emulsion tube. All right, and it's coming out the other side, so that's good. Let's put some in here through that low-speed needle. All right, so that should actually come out right there. Yep. All right, so we're good. I'll throw a little, go the opposite direction as well. In case you can't see it in the camera, there's some tiny little holes right next to that throttle plate. And that is what keeps this thing running when it's not at wide open throttle, when it's idling. So you just want to make sure those are clear. And it appears to be, but we'll just poke these through real quick. Someone had made a comment last week that they didn't like that I fast forwarded through spraying the carb spray through the carb. And basically, all you're doing is just throwing carb spray through every orifice you can find. Whether it's like an air hole or a fuel passageway, you're simply trying to just clean the whole thing out and make sure that you don't meet any resistance. So that's all we're doing. Ooh, I think this is going to clean up nicely, surprisingly. Cool. Okay, and we already know this is clear. This is your inlet. And you want to inspect your choke. This is the detent spring. You just want to check and make sure that it works nicely in those different slots. And it does, so we're good there. And that's pretty much all there is to manually clean. Not everybody has an ultrasonic cleaner. However, even if you pick up like a little jewelry one, a little super cheap one, or one of those $70 ones from Harbor Freight, it will make your life a whole lot easier, and you'll get a much better working carburetor. So let's throw this thing into the ultrasonic. All right, and I generally like to do roughly 80% water, 20% mean green. This is the secret weapon. It works amazingly well. It's only like $6 at Walmart. All right, and putting the float in does not accomplish much of anything because only about 1/3 of it is actually going to be in contact with the water. But it's kind of fun to let it float around while we're doing the video. So as usual, we're putting it in for about 10 minutes and we're going to set it to 60 degrees Celsius, which works out to be roughly 140 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, here we go. So you may have noticed partway through the ultrasonic cycle, I actually fished out the float because it looked like the brass was having some kind of a chemical reaction with the mean green. And that's not supposed to happen. It's actually well tolerated. So now that the thing is turned off, I just want to drop it in and just make sure that it's not going to have a chemical reaction. Okay, I was just seeing things apparently because yeah, there's no chemical reaction going on there. All right, I just wanted to make sure. All right, so as you can see, the bowl already looked good, but now it looks like brand new. The carb did clean up from what it was. It's obviously still old and a little stained, but this is clean now, so that's good. By the way, one thing I forgot to take off was this, the bowl gasket. You want to make sure you remove that when you clean it, either with carb spray or through an ultrasonic. All right, so let's get this needle back in here. These two springs are identical. Now, as far as in case you mix up which needle is which, the high-speed needle that goes to the bottom is the one that has the serrated ends on there. It's like knurled. Knurled? All right, so we just want to lightly seat this, and then we're going to turn it back roughly 1.5 turns. So that is lightly seated. Okay, so there's a half, there's 1, and 1.5. So that one is all set. And again, these springs are interchangeable. We'll put this back here. This is the one that goes in the side for our low speed adjustment. Let's get that seated. All right, so that's lightly seated there. So half, 1, 1.5. All right, cool. All right. So again, you want the side with that little rib there, that line, the circle, to be towards the carb. And I like to just help it out with just a little bit of oil so that it seats nicely, like so. All right, so our seat goes right in here. If you rock it like that, it goes right in and you'll hear it snap in place. And it comes right out cleanly. I like to double check it though. And we are good. That's why this tool is so cool. The third thing it does, aside from pulling the seat, reseating it, you also have a spot there where you can set the float level. So it's a neat little tool to have, and they're pretty cheap. All right, so now we have the needle on that little tab. Let's just lower it into place into our seat, like so. And we can put our pin back in. Cool. Now let's check our float. It is supposed to be parallel to the body of the carb, so it looks like we are good when it's like that. And then we can just check and make sure it's sealing. You want to make sure you don't hear anything when it's raised, so. Feels good, sounds good. I think we're good to get that back together. All right, so let's put that bowl gasket back in place. And I really have no idea how we didn't ruin that, because when that is subjected to ultrasonic solution or carb spray, it usually will get deformed. All right, so let's get that bowl back on. All right, and with the bowl, you want the rounded part right here, the little half circle, to be away from that pin. So basically like that. All right, don't forget your little gasket here. And we'll thread that in. Give it a little shake here. Now, when you're tightening this up, you want to make sure you don't bump that adjustment, or else your 1.5 that you set it to will no longer be valid. And granted, you probably should be fine-tuning it after anyway, but it's always good to start with a known entity here. All right, snug down. All right, one reassembled prehistoric Tecumseh carburetor. All right, let's get this carb back on this machine and getting this thing buttoned up. So as you can see, the gasket actually survived quite well in the ultrasonic, which is kind of unusual. But in this case, it's really like a thick cardboard almost. So yeah, it's fine. All right, so first we want to get our linkage on. So let's do that. All right, linkage is on. Let's get the fuel hose on. All right, that's good. Let's get that clamp back in place. We can reconnect our primer line here. Cool. And let's mount this puppy back on. Now, I think for now we're going to leave that carb box off because we're going to need to adjust and fine-tune this. All right, so I have fueled this thing up with some ethanol-free gas. We still have to get some oil back in it, and we also need to adjust this hand control here for the drive system and just take out a little bit of that slack. So why don't we do that now? So we're looking to make this shorter basically, so we just need to take some slack out of there. Let's see. We don't need a ton. I'm thinking that might do it. Let's try that and see how it feels. All right, let's test that. That feels quite a bit better. Maybe just a little bit more. Yeah, it feels good. There's just a little bit of play. All right, let's try that. Now, the 8 horsepower version of this engine, if I remember correctly, takes 26 fluid ounces. I could be wrong, could be 21, but I believe it's 26. Now, the reference material that I have lists this as 19 and another one listed as 21, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to start off with roughly 19 fluid ounces, or roughly 620 milliliters, and see how that does. All right, let's see how we're looking with that. Just barely over full. That's pretty good. All right, I believe the time has come to see if we can make this thing run, and if so, to dial in the engine. So let's see if we can do that. Fuel shutoff is on. Let's put the throttle all the way up to high. Let's give it some pumps, maybe 3 or 4. All right, choke is on. Let's see how many pulls this thing takes to fire up. All right, let's open up the choke. right, we had a little bit of a smoke show with that marbles burning off, but this thing is running really well. So let's get that air box back on. I think we're ready to get this outside and give it a test. All right, boys and girls, I believe it's time to give this thing a test. It has been the bane of my existence these last couple of days, but I think we're ready for a test. So since this was just running as we were trying to dial in the engine, I'm not sure if it's going to need to be choked or not, but let's give it a choke on the first pull and maybe a second pull. I don't think it'll need to be primed though. So let's try it with choke. Let's see. All right. Reverse. Yay! All right, here we go. This little guy's doing it. All right, that was a great test. I have to be honest, for quite a while I was wondering if this project was ever going to come together because we hit adversity at pretty much every turn. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. It took a lot of work getting this thing all together, but everything is working perfectly now. The critters have been evicted. The auger works great. The drive system works great. Everything is good. Once the scraper blade comes in, I'm going to go ahead and put that on and I will adjust the skid shoes. I may even make a short video just so you guys can see how to do it and just to check back in with you. But that's pretty much it. So I want to thank you for stopping by, spending some time with me today, and we'll see you next time.